okay, if I can position myself and get in front of my dream customer, even if it's 10 at a time, if I can get in front of them and story tell, because as a hypnotist, storytelling, I understand, is a very hypnotic thing in itself. The moment I say, if I would have started this podcast saying, I woke up one morning, I looked out the window, and what I saw blew my mind. Everything in your mind would have left and you would have been entranced into, okay, what did you see? Right? And so storytelling has this effect that basically, when you do it right, forces people to want to follow you.
Welcome to the Clear Brand Academy podcast, where we take the mystery out of marketing and help you get more leads and sales with a clear brand and proven marketing tactics. I'm your host, Josh Ramsey, and today on the show, we have Adrian Moreno. Adrian began his career in the health and fitness space while also gaining unparalleled experience with hypnosis and NLP, that's neuro-linguistic programming, establishing himself as a respected transformation specialist through the power of hypnotherapy. Going against what his mentors taught, Adrian spent his marketing efforts pitching and getting booked on top podcasts and grew that hypnotherapy company to $500,000 in only 12 months and is on his way to $1 million in the next 12 months. And he now spends his time teaching other coaches, course creators, and content creators how to do the same thing. If he isn't doing that, you can find him writing, reading, or watching The Office. Adrian, thank you for being on the show. Lovely to have you here. Welcome.
Yeah, brother. Thanks a lot for having me, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, that's a good story right there. And I'm not just talking about your love for The Office.
Dude, I've watched that entire season. I mean, the entire thing. I can even tell you how many times. It's insane. It's like my happy show, man. You're having a hard day, just put on The Office.
Yeah, me and you can't go down that rabbit hole because that's all we'll talk about. I did a little digging, and the average hypnotherapy business is earning about $45K a year. So you 10x'd kind of the market in the first 12 months. Tell me about that little journey right there before we get into how you did it.
Yeah, man. So basically, as you hinted in the introduction, I started in fitness. And while I was doing my fitness business, I took that to about $250,000 in 18 months. Now, that's something that wasn't included in that bio. But what happened was, when I was growing that business, I saw that the biggest problem for people who wanted to get in shape was their way of thinking. Right. So I was like, okay, then maybe I can start understanding how the mind works, and I can pick the skill up to help people not only lose weight, but lose the person who gained the weight. That was my entire thing. And I was like, all right, so let me, study this thing called hypnosis, because it helped me overcome my fear of public speaking. So I know this stuff works. And I went all in on that. And so I started applying everything that I learned to grow my fitness business to my hypnotherapy business, but it just tanked. And the stuff that I was taught, my business coach at the time, he knew I transitioned my business. And he was like, yeah, I don't see why. I mean, it's still a high ticket service. That's a big part of $500,000, by the way, is charging $5,000. But he was like, it's still high ticket. I don't see why the same strategies can't work. And those strategies are very simple. The adding 100 people a day. Adding like 50 new people a day on Facebook, trying to start a conversation with 100 people every single day, posting 2 times a day, and just like running on this constant content hamster wheel. It worked in the fitness space. I was able to do pretty well with that. But when it came to the hypnotherapy stuff, for some reason, it was the hardest sell to make organically just on Facebook. I mean, I'm pretty sure maybe another hypnotherapist has probably like knocked it out of the park with it. I just couldn't figure it out. And when I was like trying my best to figure it out, I basically lost all my money that I made during my fitness business. So I was in like a really tough spot. And then one day, everything changed. My friend that I hypnotized helped them overcome some big fears, blew her mind, and she was like, hey, I have a private mastermind of like 20 people. Do you mind coming and doing a talk on what you do? I was in like kind of like just take us through a group experience. I was like, sure, I'd be happy to do that. I love speaking. Great. So I go, I do my talk. Only 9 people show up live. I do my talk. directly after the talk, I get 2 messages on Facebook from her clients, 2 of them that were present on the call. So 2 out of the 9. And they were like, how can I work with you? Very straight to the point. How can I work with you? Like I want to get started. I sent them the application. The application even says, like, if I can help you out with this problem, would you be willing to invest $5,000? Because that's how much my services are. And they both just checked yes. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. Get on the call with them, close both of them in like 15 minutes. And so the $10,000 day for me, or $10,000 talk for me, and I really needed that $10,000, right? So here I am. I just made these sales, and I stopped and reflected, which a lot of entrepreneurs struggle to do because they're really go, go, go. I stopped and I was like, why were those the most easiest sales of my life? I'm like, they paid in full. They didn't bat at the price, and they turned out to be dream clients. I was like, why did that just happen so easily? And this is when the epiphany hit me. You just had, even though it was a small audience, quantity over quality. I mean, quality over quantity, 1,000% when it comes to leads. And so I had a smaller audience, sure, but it was a highly engaged, captivated audience that was my dream customer. That's all that mattered. That was like my dream room to be in. And so I was like, okay, if I can position myself and get in front of my dream customer, even if it's 10 at a time, if I can get in front of them and storytell, because as a hypnotist, storytelling, I understand, is a very hypnotic thing in itself. The moment I say, if I would have started this podcast saying, I woke up one morning, I looked out the window, and what I saw blew my mind. Everything in your mind would have left, and you would have been entranced into, okay, what did you see, right? And so storytelling has this effect that basically, when you do it right, forces people to want to follow you. And so I was like, if I can start storytelling in front of my audience, I would never have to worry about clients again. And so I start pitching some masterminds. Hey, I can go do some talks for you. And I was having a little bit success. I mean, like, some people were letting me in, not a lot. And every single time I did a talk, I would get at least one client. I was like, okay, clearly this is like the thing. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, where else are my audiences, congregated? Where else are they hanging out? What other masterminds, groups? And I just, all of a sudden, I was like, dude, I listen to podcasts every day as a business owner. And the statistics show over 60% of business owners listen to at least one podcast every single day. And their average listening time a day is 1 hour and 13 minutes. And so clearly, business owners are invested in this space. And I worked with business owners. So I was like, podcasting, if that's in a way like a mini mastermind, even if it's 100 people listening to that show, it's not the biggest show in the world. That's 100 of the right people, right? And so I was like, okay, revelation, epiphany moment happened. And I started, I bought this course for like $97 this workshop on how to pitch podcast. Took everything I learned from it, started pitching the podcast. But the problem is, Josh, was I pitched 40 shows and got 0 responses. And so I was like, I thought this stuff worked. I was like, I just paid like $97 for this thing. And like, what's wrong? And what am I doing wrong? I'm following the template. And I, again, instead of going and going and going, I stopped and I reflected and I was like, okay, let me break. Because I'm also like, like a geek about copywriting. So I broke it down and I was like, oh my God, dude, this is a long text-based email. The very first words in this email are, hey, my name is blank. It's, hey, my name is Adrian. They don't give a shit, really, right? And it was like, hey, my name is blank. I do this. It was literally all about me. And I was like, no freaking wonder. This is not, I'm like, I don't understand what this lady was talking about. This is a horrible pitching strategy. And I was like, this is just not going to work. And so I was like, okay, what are my strengths? My ability to communicate, the way that I can articulate my words, my tone, my cadence, my pauses. I was like, all of those things. And then my body language and my ability to storytell. And I've been told I got a charming personality. So I was like, you know what? If they can see this, they would absolutely want me on their show. So instead of sending my pitch, I turned my webcam on and I told a story. And I was like, okay. Now, let me like also say this was not a one-time recording that I blasted out to a bunch of podcasts at once. This was per podcast. I said their name. I said their name of their show. I said why I liked the show and why I thought I'd be a good fit on their show. But number four, why I thought I'd be a good fit. All of that was through a story, and using certain storytelling principles that make stories work. And I was like, okay, instead of blasting another 40 people right now and trying to pitch another 40, let's test this on a smaller scale and see what happens. So I pitched 10 podcasts with that new strategy and got booked on 8. And so when I saw that, I was like, okay, I figured something out, I think. And so in 2022, I pitched 121 shows and got booked on 52 of them. That's a 42.9% conversion rate. When you look up the average, and even in that course, she said an average is 10 to 13%. And so I don't know what X that is, but I X'd whatever that is, right, into a really high conversion rate. And we have tracked $500,000 in sales direct because we use Hotjar too. It's software that allows you to see where certain clicks come from, what your customers' behaviors are doing, basically. And we saw all the clicks were being traced back to certain podcast episodes I did. In fact, our new client that we got 2 days ago came from an interview I did 9 months ago, right? And so we just started getting all of these inbound leads, and I was like, oh my God, I freaking cracked the code. And then that's basically the story of the journey from, really struggling on the social media stuff and then just thinking outside of the box and, how can I get in front of people? And I remember when I talked about it with my coach, he was like, okay, but don't give up on social media. But I did. I was like, okay, screw this stuff. I'm just going to put my time where I truly believe I add the most value and I can get the highest return on my investment. And I just went all in on that, man. And figured out a really good way to do it over time. It got better and better and better. And you tasted a piece of that. That's why I'm on this podcast right now. You didn't reach out to me. I created this. I generated this opportunity. And I generate these opportunities on a weekly basis for my business. And now I have a lot of fun teaching people how to do the same thing. But that's a bit of the long answer to your short question.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, firstly, I was just trying to keep focused on not thinking about what you saw out of that window. So yeah, the storytelling. but more than that, yeah, for sure. I was I picked up your pitch, and it was personalized, and it was very informal, which was, as someone that creates content, I've still kind of working on that, not letting it be perfect. Just get it out, and
Very.
that's what it seemed to be on yours. I think you got something caught in your eye when you were talking to me.
Yes, I did. That was you. That was you. And dude, there's been times where I would do a pitch and I'm trying to say their name. I'm like, hey, why am I blanking on your podcast? Actually, okay, I got it. And I'll keep the pitch like that because people it's just people appreciate the realness of that. They're like, oh, this guy's not trying to sound all, pretty. He's just being him. And that's what matters,
Yeah, and I think, even if you didn't book this podcast, you're still practicing. You're still perfecting your craft. You're still in front of a mic, in front of a camera. You're developing. You're pushing out. You're hitting your, 10 a day or whatever it is that you set your goal on, and you're getting that reward, which is great. So I just want to double check. You work in a course business, podcasting. Is it good for everybody? Is it good for just courses, just coaches? Who should be podcasting?
Yeah, so definitely not just for course creators and stuff. There's certain people that I believe should focus their efforts otherwhere, and there's other industries that I believe are like, this is a gold mine. So let's talk about the gold mines. The gold mine industries that'll be really good for this is, number one, anybody who has an offer that personally develops people. And the reason I say that means life coach, business coach, me, hypnotherapist, therapist, consultants, course creators, healers, these, and authors. Authors do golden with this process, but specifically self-help and business authors. Mm-hmm. The reason I say that is because the people who listen to podcasts, they're doing it. Think about right now, like the listener right now. Why are you listening to this show? Because in some way, shape, or form, you have an idea that it's going to add to your development of professional or personal life. It's going to add to the development of that. And so you're interested in this podcast and you're more captivated. So whenever you have an offer that is already in that space, your people are already looking for stuff to continue to better themselves. It's like, like Alex Ramosi said, it's like selling hot dogs at 3 a.m. to a bunch of drunk people. They're going to want the hot dogs. You're putting an offer out there in a way to a group of people who are already interested in what you do. So coaches, course creators, consultants, authors in the self-help and business space, and I specifically self-help and business do the best. I haven't really, the only other person I tried it with was like a spiritual style book that did okay in terms of like actual book sales, but like my friend Alex, we were able to get him on one show and he made 560 something sales on his book. He had a book on how to flip houses, right? And so those kind of offers that are going to help a person grow their professional life and their personal life, will do the absolute best. And especially if you help somebody in the areas, I mean, like how Russell Brunson says, those 3 buckets: health, wealth, and relationships. Everybody has offers that help for those areas. But when you have offers that directly communicate those areas, increases, like if you sell, if you're a mechanic, like who works at a local body shop, you probably do a lot better through like joint venturing with other body shops as opposed to getting on podcast. Maybe a local radio show will do good, but it's more so the people who have offers that help people grow their businesses in some way, shape, or form, or personally grow themselves, personally develop themselves. So if you have an offer in that space, that is like the golden opportunity for you, because people already are like, I'm talking about how to overcome self-doubt on a podcast all about how to, create a successful life. Like it's just, it hits with that audience so much better. And that's just what I've seen in my experience and the people that I've, shared this process with. I always, even when people hit me up, like on a daily basis, I have messages, hey, I want to learn about your course. I'm like, first, what is your industry? And like, what kind of shows do you want to be on before I send you a link that may be irrelevant to you, So, and another thing, like, like lawyers, are really good for this, because I got my trademark lawyer by hearing him talk about trademarks on a podcast. I was like, oh my God, I don't have anything trademarked. And I looked up the guy's name, bought, and I ended up spending like $6,000 with him.
Yeah, I guess, when I look at the kind of the category behind those examples, it's some kind of online engagement, online sale, or online, business, something that there's one click away. So you're on a podcast, there's one click away, and everybody, we're going to put Adrian's one click at the end of the show, and it'll be in the show notes. Exactly. So he's also one click away. But, podcasting is really going to be great for those companies that are one click away from value. So that mechanic, one click to maybe a Google business. Oh, turns out he's in Florida. I'm in New York, so I'm not going to drive there to fix my car. So, but if he had an online course on how to fix your own carburetor, that's what he was talking about. Now.
Smart. I like the way you think, bro.
So hold on. Let me use one of your techniques. So a mechanic woke up. It was a dusty morning in Florida. I don't know if it's dusty in Florida. He looked out the window and he saw a digital course. Yeah.
He saw a digital course.
He saw a digital course one click away from a podcast, and he's like, that's it.
And he bought.
Okay, right on. Man. Okay, cool. So there's a big piece there in, I'd imagine, selecting the podcast you're going on, right? Because if you're
Oh,
doing this,
1000%.
the message you sent to me, a couple minutes, how do you choose? How do you vet?
Yes. So what you want to do is you want to find who has. Okay, so the way that I break it down in my course, I'm basically going to break it down right here. It's
No, thanks,
very,
man.
very simple. What you want to do is you want to find what number one is what bucket are you serving? Right? So health, wealth, or relationships. Don't say I can pick all of them. My hypnotherapy business could have helped every one of them, but my messaging was always about wealth. Hey, you're trying to grow your business and you're wondering why you're stuck at $100,000 a month, or you're wondering why you're procrastinating. It's not because you're procrastinating. It's because you believe you're not worthy of what you want, so you're not doing it. Right? And so, know what bucket you're filling. Know what bucket, because whenever you can dial in your messaging on one bucket, conversions will go up. Compared to I can help you with your wealth, health, relationships, conversions go down. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so keep that in mind. What bucket do you serve? And then how do you serve that bucket? What is the niche way you serve that bucket? Like I help, real estate investor. I help apartment investors, commercial, real estate investors save money on taxes. All right. It's like you want to know what is your bucket, what is your submarket, and what is the niche way you help them. And then you want to find out what other ways are people trying to solve this problem. So, for example, as a hypnotherapist who helps people grow their business through helping them get rid of beliefs and stuff that are not serving them, what other ways are they trying to grow their business? Marketing, sales, like all these other ideas, all these other areas that they're trying to grow their business in. So what I do is I pitch marketing shows, sales shows. And okay, for example, there's a show called Systems for Success. They loved the pitch because I pitched them and I said, hey, you're all about SOPs. I believe SOPs is like the number one way to create a business because you're building it to sell. It's just the most scalable way. But the biggest reasons why people don't do SOPs is not because they don't understand them. It's because they have fears, doubts, and insecurities that stop them from being the kind of entrepreneur they want. What I can do is I can go in and show your audience how to rewire their neural pathways to get rid of those issues so that they can implement the SOPs you teach them and grow your bit and grow their companies. Right? And so I hit a company, I hit a podcast that is not competitive with my offer. I don't go to another hypnotist, hypnotherapist podcast. I don't go on mindset podcast. I don't go on podcasts with my competitor. I go on podcasts that are completely different industries, but they serve the same bucket. They solve the same problem, and they just do it in a different way. And another example, if you help people create passive income through real estate, what you can do is you can go to passive income. You can go to a side hustle show. Hey, you help people create side hustles that make passive income. I can show them how to do that through real estate. I haven't seen you talk about this on your show. It can be a very jam-packed, episode. And so you're picking shows that, again, they help your audience reach the end goal that you help them reach, but it's a competitive or complementary business as opposed to, it's a complementary business as opposed to a competitive business. That's the way I find my shows. And, yeah, that's like what you want to focus on when you're finding a show, is making sure that it's not a competitor. It's a complementary business or complementary podcast host who doesn't have an offer that competes with yours, because they probably wouldn't want you on in the first place. But just what you want to do is you want to give your audience the opportunity to see that there's a new way to reach that goal. And it's like, hey, instead of hiring that next business mastermind or that next marketing agency to fix your problem, how about you work on your personal stuff? How about you work, right? And so before you know it, they're looking for marketing. They're on a marketing show, but there's a hypnotist talking about how to overcome your doubts and fears to be a better marketer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. It's similar to something that we use in Clearbrand, is kind of swimming upstream. How do you swim as far upstream before you get all lost down and in all the ways that you can get taken away with, well, I sell this thing, so I need to find people that are talking about this thing. we take a moment and we go, well, what does this thing solve? What is the benefit of the benefit of the benefit? And we kind of get that higher level. And then you go up there and you go, okay, cool. Well, it turns out I can be on a monster truck show because monster truck drivers are actually really scared that they can't do that backflip thing. And they're the one guy that can't, and you can help with that, right? So,
Exactly.
that's a great tip.
And also think of what is your audience listening to. A really good way to do this is to ask them. Make a post on Facebook. Hey, what are your favorite mindset podcasts? Hey, what are your favorite marketing podcasts? If you have a list of clients, current, past clients, even prospects. That's what I did. I was like, hey, what kind of podcast do you listen to? I'm looking for recommendations. When the reality was I was looking for shows to pitch. And I knew when I pitched those shows, they had more of that client. They had more of that person. So that's another, thing to like, what is your audience actually listening to?
Yeah. No, I love that. Kind of engaging the relationship side of it. I mean, what I love about podcasting. So, I mean, we could keep going on that. What I do also enjoy, I'm a podcast host myself, obviously, and what I love as well is meeting people like you, meeting other guests, meeting other hosts, and then there's this relationship that you build, right? We're having this hour-long conversation with somebody who runs a business that has a podcast, and then you pop out of the interview and it's like, well, hey man, how can I help you? And how can you help me? And you mentioned JVs earlier as well. Have you seen JVs come out of podcast guesting, hosting, meeting people? Oh yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So one of the things again, I teach this in my course, but I'm here to really just deliver as much value as possible. One of the things that I talk about, is how to leverage the relationships. And one of the first things is, I run a podcast myself, My First 1,000. This is so cool, man, because the first episode launches today. I've been running another podcast, but we switched over because basically I want to learn how companies get their first 1,000 customers without having to pay for them. And so basically, I'm doing a majority of that to scratch my own itch, to document my journey. But number 3, to meet with people I would have never met with. Like I have Amy Porterfield coming up in 2 weeks. Never in my life did I think I'd be able to get on a Zoom call with her, right? And so podcasting opens up that possibility. That's a great thing about it, but podcast guesting does the same thing. So one of the very first things that I like to do is after a show, and look, be very upfront, Josh, you will see this happen right after the show. I'm like, hey, look, I'm not going to super responsive on email, which I check email not every day. I check it like 3 times a week. Right. So I'm like, so whenever the podcast gets released, can you go ahead and text me and let me know that it got released? Boom. I got their phone number now. And then the next day, hey, that was a great episode. Are you looking for more guests? Because if you are, I know a good guest for you because of blank, 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 blank. Now I'm adding value to their life by offering a guest. And then before you know it, that relationship's built. And then you can say, awesome, I know that you liked my podcast. I'm really looking to get this message out to more people. Do you know any hosts that would benefit from having me on? That little trick alone has gotten me booked on so many extra shows that I haven't even, like, ones that I haven't accounted for in terms of my pitch conversion stuff. Because it's such a direct ask and you build the well. Like right now, the relationship's literally being built. But in terms of JVs, so one of my JV partners for this offer is a publishing company, right? So I went on their podcast maybe like 6 months ago to talk about how to get over your fear of using your voice, to, put your book out there and all of that stuff. And so what I did was I make sure I also make sure I check in on them like every month or so. Like, hey, I found this article. I think it'll be helpful for you. Like, I'm always just finding ways to stay in contact with them in a way that's not a creep. I'm like genuinely just looking to be a friend. And I've been doing that with this publishing company, not knowing I was going to create this offer. But this offer ended up getting created through people asking so much. But when this offer got created, I reached back out to her. Hey, so if I'm not mistaken, you run a publishing company, right? Yes, great. So you help people put their books out. She does specifically business and self-help. I was like, okay, I got an idea for you. I can add an extra 6 figures to your business every year and you wouldn't have to lift a finger for it. Do you want to like chat about it? She was like,
No.
sure. No, I don't want the money.
Yeah.
No,
No, thanks. You can keep the money.
but think about also,
Yeah.
I asked that from a relationship already being built.
For sure.
So she was all like, yeah, Adrian, I'm sure. Yeah, let's hop on a Zoom. I was like, hey, look, you have authors. The moment I was like, first tell me your process. How do you do? She's like, well, we first have our consultation, then we agree on a title, then we agree on the outline. Once the outline's agreed on, we go and start moving forward with the book. I was like, okay, great. Do you agree that one of the hardest things for authors, especially new ones, is to sell their books? She was like, I agree. I was like, and do you listen to podcasts? She was like, yes. I said, do you believe that your authors can sell more books by being on podcasts? She was like, oh my God, yes. I just don't know how to do it. I was like, well, I do. So since you helped them write a book, I can partner with you and help them sell it. So the moment that y'all guys agree on a book proposal, y'all guys agree on an outline, that's when you tell them, hey, now that the book is written, now that we agreed on where we're going, now is a prime time to start marketing this book before it's even fully finished. So my friend made a course on how to get on podcasts. Thankfully, I did a deal with him. We got it for you for free if we bundled it in their services, or they just offer it as a one-off complement to their service. So that JV is doing very well for us because majority of them trust their person who's helping them get the book done. They make a suggestion. Oh, can you get me on a podcast? Abso-freaking-lutely. So you also, when it comes to JVs, is you also have to understand the customer journey and the timeline, because that's the only way to make a JV work. Because when you understand the customer journey deeply and what they're going through step by step throughout someone's product, service, then you know the actual touch points when to make offers, because offers at the right time are what make offers convert when it's the right offer, of course. But so that is one of the JVs that I've created. A second JV I created was I went on a business coach's podcast. Afterwards, he was like, hey, I have a client. Do you mind? Like, I'm gonna send him over to you. I think you can work with them. I did a session with this client, blew his client's mind. He was like, dude, best session ever. Like, my life has changed. So I went to the business coach and I said, do you have like an 80% or higher retention rate? He was like, no, I have about like a 40% retention rate. I was like, okay, cool. What is your actual success rate? He was like, well, probably around the same. I was like, okay, cool. Your program doesn't suck, right? I'm like, you're good at what you do. The problem is some of your clients are not wired for the amount of success that you deliver. So let me, when they're procrastinating, doubting themselves, getting in the way, send them to me. I'll send them back to you. They'll be free of all that shit and they can go make a boatload of money. You get more success stories. You get more testimonials. You get more clicks. You get more referrals and you make more money. And I will also even cut you a piece of every single session that you send my way, right? He was like, deal. And then before you knew it, I had constant clients being fed to me from this business coach, right? But also keep in mind with these JVs and the podcasting, everything I'm doing is to add real value to their life. It is genuine. It's ethical. It's number one. It's very ethical. It's very relevant to them and it's valuable to them. And so I would never go for a podcast that I felt like I was taking from. I would never go into a JV that I felt like I was taking from. JVs only win when you have an attitude of increase. Podcasting only works if you have the attitude of increase. How can I help you win, and win some more? And so, long story short, I have created JVs and I wanted to walk you through what I did to create those. But I have created JVs from the podcast host himself. And I've also gotten speaking opportunities. Like, I did a podcast one time and the guy was like, hey, I'll run these quarterly masterminds for my high touch mastermind. Yeah. He was like, do you do speaking? I was like, I actually have a talk. Let me send it to you. It's 20 minutes. You let me know after that if you want me to move forward. He was like, okay, cool. Sent him a talk next day. He was like, hey man, what's your price? I was like, great. Got me a public speaking gig from that, and it's just being good at what you do on the podcast. But it opens up endless avenues because every single person you meet is a doorway to more people that can change your life that you may have never had the opportunity to meet. That's like another hidden benefit of podcasting is the relationship building. Like I got some really cool people's phone numbers in my phone because of this stuff, and I find ways to text them, find reasons to text them. And just last night I was talking to Eli Wild, one of the biggest like sales guys in the world, really. Spend time talking to him, and like just because I found a video that I thought would help him, and then it led us to texting for like 20 minutes, right? And so these are the kinds of things that happen because of podcasting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it just puts so much of what's going on inside your head out there for people to listen in on and get a perspective on, and have an opinion. And some are going to like it, some are not going to like it, but either way, it's out there, and you're connecting, and you're building relationships that you can then leverage forward. That's really great, man. That's really, really great. Where do you want to go from here? We've kind of spoken about podcasting in general, how you pitch shows. I think that's huge. Like I think that piece
so
is
let me talk about that. So okay, so when you pitch shows, as somebody who ran a top 5% show for a while, I got on an average week maybe like 30 pitches, 40 pitches a week. So hundreds in a month, right? And still to this day, I don't even run that podcast anymore and I still get pitches for it. But to this day, every single pitch is a email or is a text based pitch. Every single pitch. That blows my mind because HubSpot said in 2023 that 80% of consumers want to see more video. Okay? So, do you see now why I stood out when I sent you my pitch? I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person who pitches you, right? The reason I stood out was because I'm probably, if I'm not mistaken, probably the first person to send you that kind of video pitch, or that kind of high touch in a video. And so just take what you want with that, but video will always win. And it's different. It's new. One of the people I pitched, he's been running a podcast since 2012. This is like an OG. He's been running a podcast for a while. And he was like, Adrian, in over a decade of running podcast, I have never in my life received a video pitch. And he goes, that's why it was an automatic yes. The moment I pressed play, he goes, the immediacy of a yes came up. Because I was like, this freaking dude just like, he was like, what the hell is this, right? He was so shocked. So video pitches are what works. But you want to tell a story. Don't just don't, hey, my name is Adrian Moreno. I'm a hypnotherapist. I help people do this, and this, and I think I'll be a great fit for your show. Like, if I pitched you like that, Josh, you probably would have been like, bloop, like just click right off. But, hey, thanks for the video, but no, right? Because it's like you just don't want to get pitched like that. That's how most people pitch through text. Okay, you want to animate your pitch.
Give us a frame. Yeah, give us some tips on pitching on that video that we need to put together.
The framework is very simple. The framework is very simple. First step of the framework is connect. When I say connect, I mean you immediately connect with the individual on a personal level. When I pitched you, hey, Josh, the second word out of my mouth was your name. Always include their name in the first three words. Mm-hmm. If you can include their name in the first three words, I guarantee you bought at least 15 more seconds. The reason why is because your name is your most favorite word in the universe, right? If you're running around having the time of your life and somebody yells, Josh, you will stop everything to turn around and be like, what's up? Right? And like looking around to see who called your name. My neck's all stiff, so I'm like, dude. But like you'll be looking around to see what the hell's going on, right? So say their name in the first get. Find a reason to connect with them. Love your show. Love what you're doing. Just find a reason. Find some similarity that you can connect on. Once you connect, the next step is to immediately go into your story. Right? Now, when I say connect, one of the things I also want to include in connect is make sure you also include like, hey, I think I'd be a great fit for your show. Right? But whenever you say, I think I'd be a great fit for your show, that's when you go on to introducing yourself. That is when you go on to introducing yourself, but through a story. And I never, ever, ever say my first and last name. If you go back to the pitch I sent you, man, and watch it, just Adrian. People don't really care about your last name until you add some kind of value to their life. And so I just don't say I don't say my last name ever. And I tell a story about basically the founding story of my business. And that's what you want to do. People are like, how do you tell a story? Tell a story. Like, it's not about creating stories. People think stories are created. Yeah, if you're making something up, but if you're telling a story, you're just observing what happened and articulating it. That's it. And then after you introduce yourself through a story, then you make a direct ask. So I think I'd be a good fit on your show. Let me know what you think and get off. No, a direct ask. I think it'd be a great fit to be on your show. And so I'd love to collaborate. So if you would like to move forward, I'm going to make this easy for you. I include a speaker kit and a speaker site. You can check some stuff out, get some references. Aside from that, let me know what the best next steps would be through your next message. And just let me know if I got to fill a form out or book a call, whatever it is. Let me know what the next steps are. Boom. And the pitch in total is about 2 minutes. The longest I've done sometimes is like maybe 3 minutes and 30 seconds. But the story part of your pitch, you want to make sure you keep your story in 90 seconds or less, because that's the meat of the pitch, but you want to make sure it's about 90 seconds or less. And in your story, you want to you want to create a picture for them to see. It's like, when I was 4 years old, I was standing in my grandmother's living room. I looked directly out of the window and I saw my dad, the strongest man in the universe at that time, drop to his knees and beg my mom not to leave him. And as I stood there in the center of that, I looked up and I can see my dad screaming some more. That's when I realized I was losing my family. You see I'm painting a picture. In your mind, you're probably creating your own living room scene. You're probably creating your own image of a window, of a grown man dropping to his knees. The reason why this is significant is because human beings, we only act based off of what we see. Think about this. Are you a meat eater, vegan? I don't really care, but are you meat eater or vegan?
I do eat meat, yeah.
Okay, great.
Love meat.
So meat, I'm vegetarian, right? Hate meat, don't like it. So I'm vegetarian. And I never, ever, ever, ever wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to try so hard not to eat beef today. Oh, it's going to be hard. The reason why is because when I think of beef, I think of a cow with all kinds of diseases. That's what I picture in my mind. And in my mind, when I think of pork, I picture a infected ass pig. And so in my mind, these pictures don't seem right. So they dictate my behavior. All images influence people's minds. When I'm hypnotizing somebody, I'm constantly imagine this, imagine this, imagine this, imagine this, because images are what influence human behavior. This is why stories are so effective. So when you're sending your pitch out, you need to tell a story. And people say, how do I tell a compelling one? All stories are compelling. The problem is they're not told. There's Heineken. I think it was Heineken or, actually, let's just forget the beer, like the actual brand. I may be off on the brand. But anyways, there was this one marketer who went to a beer company and they were like, hey, we really, really want to become the number one beer in the US, but we're really struggling to break through the market. So he walked around the plant, the copywriter, he walks around the plant, the marketer, he's walking around the plant and he's like, and the people, the beer plant, they were showing him step by step how the beer is made. He was like, this is the most fascinating process I have ever seen in my life. And he goes, this is how beer is made? He was like, yeah. He goes, why don't you tell the story of how you guys are making this beer? And he was like, well, there's nothing special about it. Every other beer company makes beer.
Yeah,
like
this is ringing some bells. Yeah.
Right? And then he's all like, well, no other company's telling the story.
Yeah.
So if you tell the story, imagine what happens. All of a sudden, blew up, became the number one beer company in the US, overtook the market because of that story. It's not that it was a compelling story. It was that they expressed the story. So many people have stories that they are just refusing to express. Or not refusing, but they don't know any better. They don't understand that sharing
Yeah.
your story. Like sit down with a homeless man, ask him about his life. You will be captivated that entire conversation.
Why do
Right?
you think?
So
Why do you think it
stories
is
is
that
big.
that generally we are so trained into not telling our stories? That there's such a
Well,
well, I mean, and maybe is that true? I mean, you're one of the only ones that pitched the show with a story, so there's that
yeah. So when
data.
it comes to
But
not telling a story, this is where the hypnotist side of me comes out. Not telling a
careful
story
now.
hey, like, oh
Consent,
shit, like, hold on,
consent
I don't want to
before
get hypnotized.
hypnosis.
Hey, sleep, right? No, no. And
What?
look at my shirt, man. My shirt says, "Trust me, I'm a hypnotist."
Okay.
So
For
trust.
those driving right now, Adrian's wearing a shirt with a deeply hypnotic spiral on his chest, and I'm closing my eyes because I do not consent just yet. No, for sure.
Watch after this. You're gonna pay me $5,000. But just real quick to answer that question, because that is a really interesting question. It always comes down to a belief. In some way, somehow, you associate sharing, expressing with danger. Like, for example, I had a client, 38 years old. He was struggling writing a book. He actually was writing the book for 4 years. One of those people.
Wow.
He was like, I just can't get the book done, and like I'm trying to figure out what's going on. So we did hypnosis. He went back to a memory where he was 4 years old, and he tried to speak up and ask his big cousin something, and his cousin said, "Shut up, nobody wants to hear you." And in that moment, he tells himself, my voice doesn't matter. So he grew up with that belief playing in the background, becoming an emotion. A belief turns into emotion, and emotion is going to dictate what you do or what you don't do. And he had that experience. So the only reason people don't share their story is what I call entrepreneurial voicelessness. And it just typically comes from decisions you made at a young age that you made to protect you. Because you feel like you're going to be criticized, shamed, punished, laughed at for being honest, for being yourself. So it typically comes from a fear of being yourself, man. That's really what it comes down to. And if you can get over that and just tell the story, it's just a fear at the end of the day.
Yeah, super interesting. I love that acronym for fear: false evidence appearing real.
Yep,
fear is false
exactly.
evidence appearing real. Okay, so that's the reason why the majority of entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, course creators, agencies are not podcasting. They've got something going on, and if they can step past that, connect with story. So just in the frame, I just want to close the loop there. So there's a connect, then there's a story, then there's an offer.
Yep. Connect, introduce yourself through story. Yep. Right? So connect, introduce yourself through story, CTA. Boom. Simple.
Okay.
Connect, introduce yourself to story. And one of the things that I always say at the end is it's never, if you like, let me be on your show. It's if you would, and if you go back to the picture and watch the one I sent you, if you would like to collaborate and create this wow moment for every one of your listeners, let me know what the best next steps are. That's the best CTA right there, because collaboration typically feels a lot better.
Yeah.
And it is a collaboration. Me and you right now are collabing to serve your audience.
Yeah. Well, it's been a great conversation, man. As we start to kind of hit the tail end here, anything we missed out that you want to get in here?
I'm gonna be biased here for a second, but it's the best kind of bias I can give you, and that is, if you're not podcasting is a new radio. It went from 140 million U.S. listeners to 344 million U.S. listeners in a year. 50% of podcast consumers say they don't mind being advertised to. They actually like being advertised to on podcast. They're more likely to buy your stuff. The average podcast listener makes $75,000, with 15% of podcast listeners making $250,000 a year. So they have the money to pay you. They are more intrigued in what you offer. They're more likely to buy when you ask them to buy. And it's just only going to continue to grow. So and another thing is, I made a course sale yesterday through like DM. Somebody was like, well, you know, like, I don't know if I should do this because like I have a lot more on my plate right now. And I just don't want to add another strategy. And me, I got multiple strategies going. And I'm like, podcasting is like SEO. The earlier you do it, the better. The more consistent you are, the better. No matter how big your plate is right now, you can handle 5 interviews a month. And trust me, that will accumulate. And before you know it, you're going to start getting inbound leads that you would have not have thought about. You will just start getting all these leads. And another thing about being on a podcast is at the end, watch how I do this. When Josh says, how can the listeners follow you or where can they reach out to you? The biggest mistake people make is you can follow my Facebook here.
Yeah.
My Instagram handle here. My this here. My this here. Yeah. What this does is creates a problem of too many options. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you one link. That link is going to bring you into my email list, which I will then nurture you and make you a paying customer. So make sure you have those assets built when you're going on podcast. Mm-hmm. So by the way, we're going to change that link that I sent you. But when you go on podcast, so you can, because you don't want to just get on the freaking show and have no way for them to follow you and not have an email sequence to follow up with them. It's like, buying a car with no money for gas unless you're driving a Tesla. But other than that, that's like the big thing I want to say right there. Start doing it yesterday. It's like, it is the prime time to get into this space right now, especially if you're in those industries I talked about earlier, especially if you have a course, this thing can sell evergreen through podcasting, like little webinars. You have like 100 webinars out in the world. Right now, I got 52 webinars out in the world, and so these things, it's something that is a very ROI task. Also, keep in mind, it took me 4 months to get my first paying customer from podcasting. Mm-hmm. 6 months in, it just started blowing up. That's why I'm saying it's like SEO. SEO 6, 7, 8 months down the line, 9 months down the line, you're happy you started doing SEO because you're getting all these inbound leads. So it's the same kind of thing there. Yeah. And I would say that's it.
Oh, that's great, man. Well, it's been a fantastic conversation. So please do. How do we get in touch with you if we want to hear more from you?
In other words, how do you get into my funnel, into my world, right? I'm very blunt about everything. But really, the best way to get in touch with me is to get on my email list and to get into my world. Mm-hmm. So just go to thepowerpitch.co/go. thepowerpitch.co/go. Enter your name and your email, and you'll start seeing me in your inbox. And all of my socials are connected to my email. So if you want to follow me on Facebook and all of that, they'll be on my email. So just get onto my list and watch how I do it. Like, study my emails. I get a really high conversion rate on my emails. Study my emails. Study the way I engage with you, the entire experience. So yeah, that'll be the best way.
That sounds good, man. So thepowerpitch.co/go feels like a bit more effort, and that could be a children's nursery rhyme. But thank you so much for being on the show.
Got to make it simple, man. Absolutely. Thanks for having me, brother.
Thanks for being on the show. It was great chatting to you.
Thanks for listening to the Clear Brand Academy podcast, where we take the mystery out of marketing and help you get more leads and sales with a clear brand and proven marketing tactics. If you liked this podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to outsource your marketing to our team, go to clearbrand.com.